Number 10. Unpopular. Now that Charles is king, his new role is going to be daunting, and he has a real uphill battle to restore his tarnished reputation. Queen Elizabeth was overwhelmingly popular and well respected, but her son, on the other hand, has a major image problem: strained family relationships, endless scandals, and lingering allegations of racism against him. Charles confronts those challenges at the age of 73, the oldest monarch ever to take the throne in a lineage that dates back 1,000 years, alongside his wife Camilla, who was equally controversial and universally disliked. In short, the British public sees the new king as weak, vain, and ill-equipped for the role of sovereign. Although Charles has taken a stand on important environmental issues such as sustainability and climate change, he has fallen pitifully short on animal welfare issues. He has also been ridiculed for admitting that he talks to plants and obsesses over hating modern architecture. But more than anything, he got a whole lot of backlash for speculating about the complexion of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's future children. He allegedly asked Camilla, "I wonder what the children would look like," and lowering his voice, asking, "I mean, what do you suppose the children's complexions might be?" So the allegations of racism were pretty hard to ignore. Number 9. Short reign. With Queen Elizabeth II's death on Thursday, King Charles III has now become the oldest person in British history to be king at age 73. But the fact is that Charles's reign is inevitably going to be far shorter than Queen Elizabeth's, so the fact that King Charles will have a much shorter reign concerns some people. Why? Change on a grand scale can be scary, and people inherently don't like the idea of instability, which is something that they never had to worry about with Queen Elizabeth. Throughout the nation, she was a symbol of stability and order, even managing to outlast 12 US presidents. So after all, at Charles's age, some might question that he will be unable to tackle royal tours with the same vigor as his mother, and with the 1937 Regency Act, there are only 4 family members that can act on the king's behalf when he is sick, incapacitated, or out of the country. But that's a major problem because currently 2 of those 4 people are out of action. Prince Andrew is now disgraced from his scandal surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, and Prince Harry is ineligible because he lives abroad. So it's a bit of a messy situation. Number 8. They hate Camilla. A survey from BGM Research revealed that only 20% of people think Camilla should take the title of queen. Given that Prince Charles is now married to the other woman, that may also make people feel less inclined to get behind him as the reigning monarch. Back in the 90s, one of the biggest scandals to rock the British royal family was when Charles was caught having an affair with Camilla. The transcript of their phone sex was published on the front pages for days, and was so controversial at the time because he was still married to Princess Diana and she was married to Andrew Parker Bowles. The transcript reads like something out of a used bookstore romance novel. The incident ultimately broke Camilla's 20-year marriage and publicly humiliated her husband and children, and played a major role in Charles and Diana's divorce, which would come only a few years later and was requested by the Queen herself. So it's likely that the new king will never be able to fully live down the scandal. Number 7. Succession will change. After Charles becomes king, Prince William, one of Queen Elizabeth's grandchildren, will move up and take the position called heir apparent. And after his father's coronation, Prince William will assume the title of Prince of Wales in a separate ceremony. Charles is currently called the Prince of Wales, as that title is traditionally given to the next in line to the throne. This would make Kate Middleton the Princess of Wales. But because this was Diana's title, she might choose a different one, just out of respect for her late mother-in-law, which is kind of like how Charles's current wife Camilla uses her own title, the Duchess of Cornwall. So the Queen's passing would totally change the line of succession, and put William and Kate's children a lot closer to the throne. So George would become second in line, Charlotte would be third, and little Louis would be fourth in line. And Prince Harry will still technically remain below them in 5th place to the throne. Interestingly enough, the original law stated that younger male heirs would be considered for the throne before their older female siblings. However, in 2013, this all changed, and now any older female sibling born after the 28th of October 2011 can be considered first for the throne. So because Princess Charlotte was born in 2015, she gets to keep her place in line. Number 6. Bad attitude. Many Brits think that Charles won't be a good king and fear that he just doesn't have what it takes to rise to the occasion. Whether it's because of his personality traits or capabilities or something else entirely, if people don't have confidence that he will do a good job, it will be hard for them to get behind him. In fact, when it comes to best-selling books about the real life of the royals, you'll see that Charles isn't exactly praised by biographers. In fact, some of his private rants and tantrums have been made public, further damaging damaging his reputation. It was 2005 during a holiday in the Swiss Alps, just a few days before his wedding to Camilla, and the new king's general frustration boiled over and he made a rather awkward comment to Harry and William because he didn't seem to realize that there was a microphone nearby. He answered the reporter's question politely and then through gritted teeth muttered under his breath, "Bloody people, I can't bear that man. He's so awful, he really is." And yes, the microphones picked up every word. It was just plain awkward, but it goes to show you just how much Charles loves to complain. Number 5. Royal Tour. When his position is solidified and Prince Charles becomes king, it will be time to get to work, even before his mother's funeral. After a short period of grieving and official condolences for the family, the new king will embark on a tour of the UK prior to the funeral, visiting Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. He will meet leaders and attend services as well as go out and meet the people. Although it seems like a very difficult task to anyone, especially because he would still be grieving, Charles has been training for this moment his entire life, so he's going to be well prepared. Not only that, but going to meet his subjects will be very good for his image, as he will really need to do the work to encourage positive feelings among the public about his new position. Because the truth is that many Brits think that Prince Charles wouldn't be a good king. One of the main arguments is that he just simply doesn't possess the charm and warmth that Princess Diana had. He comes across as aloof, and the New Yorker once described him as a snob. In general, he just never really tried to relate to ordinary people, while Prince William, on the other hand, has reached out to people just as much as his mother did, and is thought of as a much more compassionate person. Number 4. Too political. Blame the British press or Charles's self-created scandals over the years, but the more salacious or negative details of his life always seem to make the headlines. In 2015, the Black Spider memos caused quite a stir for him. The collection consisted of 27 memos that he sent in 2004 and 2005, lobbying British Prime Minister Tony Blair for the policy changes that he'd hoped for, including promoting alternative medicine and even asking to replace military helicopters. This was a pretty serious scandal because members of the royal family are supposed to stay out of politics and remain neutral, especially the ones who were always destined to be king. But Charles is often not shy about sharing his opinions on political matters, and this has led to him being criticized for it, possibly to the detriment of his future reign. And then in September of 2021, Charles had a brand new scandal to contend with. The chairman of the Prince Foundation, Michael Fawcett, was accused of bribing a Saudi billionaire with knighthood and UK citizenship if he was willing to donate to the foundation. So far, the investigation is still ongoing. Number 3. Charles's coronation. The ceremony won't happen for several months to allow time for a mourning period and preparation. But once the Queen has been laid to rest, the palace will get to work and organize a coronation for the new King of England. For instance, Queen Elizabeth ascended the throne after her father died in 1952, but her official coronation was only held a year and a half later, to allow an appropriate length of time between a monarch's passing and holding a celebration to crown the heir. Charles will then pick his name, as British monarchs are allowed to pick their own ruling name when they take the throne, like Queen Elizabeth's father, King George VI, who was known as Bertie, but he chose to be King George after his father, King George V. Elizabeth, on the other hand, had a far easier choice, since her birth name is the same name as another one of England's great queens, Elizabeth I. So there's been a ton of speculation that Charles would choose a different name when he is crowned, like George after his grandfather or Philip after his father. But chances are he'll end up keeping his name and just become King Charles III. Number 2. Taj Mahal Photo. One of the most iconic photos ever taken of Diana was shot during a visit to India with Charles in February of 1992. The couple were expected to visit the Taj Mahal together, but Diana went on her own, which led to the headline-making photo that was a nail in the coffin for the new king's public image. It became the defining and memorable image of the tour. But why? Well, Charles practically abandoned his wife to visit some random architecture school, while Diana sat alone on a bench in front of the most famous monument of love. At the time, she told reporters her visit there was a very healing experience, but she did say, "It would have been better if both of us had been here, but my husband has to be in Delhi." The image was so powerful because it became the embodiment of Diana's loneliness and isolation, and really solidified Charles's image as a villain, opening him up to harsh criticism for not accompanying her. Years later, in 2016, William and Kate visited the exact same place and recreated the photo sitting side by side. In fact, the memory of his mother must have been very overwhelming there, because William actually started crying and was clearly overcome with the emotion of her memory. And coming in at number 1, too outspoken. Charles has been outspoken on a whole range of sensitive issues, from genetically modified crops to homeopathic medicines and architecture. Interestingly enough, he has always been a strong climate change activist and has been speaking out about it since 1968. Charles was a prominent backer of the 2015 Paris Climate Accord and discussed the subject with Donald Trump over tea in December of 2019. This has made him a lot more of a divisive figure than his mother, who barely cracked an expression during her 70-year reign, let alone expressed a single opinion. But Elizabeth's legendary ability not to offend was more strategic than many people realize. Charles has also said some outrageous things throughout his lifetime, like, "I'm not really good at being a performing monkey. I'm not prepared to just perform whenever they want me to perform on that sort of score." And "That's called a microphone. It's a big sausage that picks up every time you say." But he also angered quite a few people when he infamously said, "Do you seriously expect me to be the first Prince of Wales in history not to have a mistress?" And let's not forget that notorious interview where he insisted that he was faithful to Princess Diana up until he felt the marriage was broken. Number 10, Operation London Bridge. The plan following Queen Elizabeth's passing is codenamed London Bridge, even though details of the plan were leaked to the press. Behind the scenes, events will unfold like clockwork precision, as it's crucial to the operation that the chain of communication is followed exactly as planned in order to control the spread of the news correctly, as the information must be brought to the British government first before the world finds out. In fact, a similar plan was followed when Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, died in April last year. When the Queen passes, a number of strict measures will immediately come into play. First, the Queen's private secretary directly informs the Prime Minister and the Privy Council office, which works with both the monarchy and the government. The Queen's private secretary is supposed to use the code words "London Bridge is down." Then the Prime Minister will host urgent calls with the Cabinet Secretary and a senior cabinet. From there, the Foreign Office will inform the 15 governments and the 39 nations in the rest of the Commonwealth to let them know the news. So it's really crucial to the monarchy that the information is very well contained before it becomes public knowledge. If you're loving this video so far, please hit that like button, it would really help us out. Number 9, the bells will toll. Once all the really important people know, everyone else across the United Kingdom and the world will find out. You'll probably remember for the rest of your life where you were when you heard the news. In London, the ceremonial traditions of the British monarchy will begin. National flags will be immediately flown at half-mast on all government and civic buildings, like churches and the royal palaces across the UK. This should happen within 10 minutes of the news being broadcast to the world. Then official gun salutes will be arranged in London at all saluting garrison stations. In the immediate hours after the Queen's passing is announced, the bells will toll in churches all around London. Not only that, but the famous tenor bell at Westminster Abbey will be heard, which is only ever rung in the event of a royal death. St. Paul's Great Tom will also toll. Britain will enter a period of mourning before the funeral, and multiple businesses will close for around 10 days. Things like theatres, clubs, and sporting events. Only at this time will full details of the royal funeral be issued, along with details of a national minute's silence. Number 8, Prince Charles will be king. Although there will be rituals and ceremonies, the prince does not actually need any of that to become king. It happens immediately. Despite the fact that some British citizens don't want Prince Charles to be king, the moment that the Queen passes, he officially becomes the sovereign, and will go through a kind of transformation that is carried out ceremonially and legally the very next day. And yes, there is also a codename for Charles's ascension to the throne. It's called Operation Springtide. The very first visitor to the new king has to be the Prime Minister, and in order to ensure a smooth transition to the new official head of state, all members of Parliament will gather to swear allegiance to Charles. These steps were also carried out just hours after Queen Elizabeth's father, King George VI, died way back in 1952. On the evening of Elizabeth's passing, Charles will address the nation and give a televised speech at 6 p.m, which the whole world will likely be watching. The next day, senior government figures will proclaim Charles's ascension to the throne at St. James Palace at 11 a.m, and he will be proclaimed king. Trumpets will sound, the flag will be raised up, and cannons will go off in a royal salute. Number 7, questionable parenting. Charles has always had a bit of a rocky relationship when it comes to being a father to his two sons William and Harry. In fact, after an heir to the throne had been secured, Diana said that Charles had been hoping their second child would be a girl, and obviously it wasn't. In her biography, Diana said she knew Harry was a boy, but kept it a secret until after he was born, as Charles actually had a negative reaction, saying, "Oh god, it's a boy, and commented on his red hair. But this is nothing compared to the hospital incident. In 1991, 8-year-old Prince William underwent emergency surgery for a skull fracture after being hit by a golf club to the head while playing with schoolmates. The young prince was kept overnight at London's Great Ormond Street Hospital following an hour-long operation. Diana spent the night sleeping in a bed set up near William's room so she could look after her son, whereas Charles took a much different approach. Rather than stay and comfort his wife and injured son after a 15-minute visit, the prince left the hospital to go to the opera. It's no surprise that when Buckingham Palace informed the press of the prince's decision to keep his previous plans but keep in touch with doctors, he was completely bashed by the tabloids. Number 6. Mega crowds. There will be a massive outpouring of grief as soon as the public finds out, which might be similar to the wave of emotion felt after Princess Diana's death in 1997. This is because most people never knew a time when Queen Elizabeth wasn't queen, and so they won't even be able to imagine the moment when the queen passes. For the British people, it will be a moment of tremendous grief and will likely be very overwhelming. According to documents obtained by Politico, there is concern that the number of people who will come to London to mourn Queen Elizabeth could number into the hundreds of thousands, which could really present a logistical nightmare for the city. It's more than possible that the sheer amount of people will overwhelm the transportation systems, the hospitality industry, basic services, and even policing and crowd control. Like after Prince Philip's death last year, when Buckingham Palace requested that the public not gather outside the royal residences to leave tributes because of the pandemic, and a whole bunch of people did anyway. Not only that, but it's hard to imagine people not gathering after the Queen's death, if only to leave notes, mementos, and bouquets of flowers. Number 5. Marriage to Diana. Charles's marriage to Diana didn't exactly get off to the best start, especially when we think back to their 1981 engagement interview. When he was asked if he loved Diana, he looked very nonchalant and just said, "Whatever love means," which caused a lot of people to scratch their heads. And years later, Diana actually admitted that the moment had traumatized her. When the couple wed in 1981 in front of a global television audience of more than 750 million people, they seemed to be perfect for each other. But behind the scenes, the marriage had extreme problems, and it became apparent that Charles was having an affair with Camilla. A heartbroken Diana exposed the affair in an infamous 1992 interview, saying, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Charles publicly admitted to being unfaithful in his own interview, and the couple divorced in 1996. There was already public outrage growing against him, but it all came to a head when the princess was killed in a Paris car crash in 1997. From that point on, there were vitriolic outpourings in the press against both him and Camilla, and his popularity sank to an all-time low. So the British public, who is still very protective of Diana, still haven't been able to forgive Charles for how he treated her during their ill-fated marriage. Number 4. The Queen's funeral. As the protocol goes, Queen Elizabeth II will be moved from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster for the public viewing of her casket at Westminster Hall, where she will lie in state, where the military procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall will be lined with crowds, wishing her a final farewell. The Queen will have a state funeral, and on the 10th day after her passing, the Queen's body will be moved into Westminster Abbey for an elaborate state funeral where several world leaders will be in attendance. Although the UK currently has no legal limit on how many people can attend funerals, there may still be limits on who will be there. The day of the funeral is to be an official day of mourning in Britain, and the nation will quite literally come to a halt that day, as crowds are expected to be gathered on the street as well. After the funeral at Westminster Abbey, the Queen's body will be brought home to Windsor Castle outside of London, where many members of the royal family over the centuries have been buried at St George's Chapel, as her final resting place will be beside Prince Philip, where some other monarchs and royal family members are also buried. Number 3. They prefer William. William, Kate, and their 3 children are adored all throughout England. In fact, a survey by BGM Research reveals that nearly half of the British public wants Prince Charles to step aside and give the throne to his oldest son. The couple have now been married for nearly a decade, and The Atlantic called their relationship a fairy tale, with their picture-perfect family and their lack of scandals. Plus, Prince William and Prince Harry are the most liked royals since records began, so it makes sense that people want to see them on the throne. But experts believe this would be nearly impossible. The bigger question now is how long King Charles will decide to reign now that he has taken the throne. Will he do the job for a couple of years before abdicating and handing the crown to his eldest son? Throughout Throughout their lives, the younger generation of the royal family has tried to find a balance between the fast-changing society that they have now and the rigid institution that is the monarchy. This tension has practically torn the brothers apart. While William leads a life of traditional duty, charity work, and military pageantry, Harry resides outside LA with his American ex-actress wife Meghan, who seems to be more interested in Hollywood than Buckingham Palace. The brothers, who were once very close, are now barely on speaking terms. Number 2. Camilla will be queen. Although it didn't always seem likely, it's become quite apparent that Camilla will be named queen consort, because according to experts, the longer that she's actually married to Prince Charles before he ascends the throne, and the bigger her public profile becomes, the more likely it is that she'll be formally styled as queen when Charles becomes king. So why was it thought that she'd never officially be queen even though she's married to Charles? Well, it has a lot to do with her choice of current title. Technically, as the wife of the Prince of Wales, Camilla is entitled to be called the Princess of Wales, but because that was Princess Diana's title, she instead chose to use the Duchess of Cornwall, out of an apparent respect for her memory. So based on the fact that she chose to keep her lesser title, there was speculation at the time of her marriage to Charles that she might be called Princess Consort instead of Queen when Charles becomes king. But as her popularity has steadily increased over the years, this seems less likely now. Although to anyone who is unaware of the history between Charles, Camilla, and Princess Diana, I couldn't recommend enough that you look into it and find out why Camilla was so unpopular in the first place. And coming in at number 1, uncertainty. Although there is much debate about what happens when the Queen passes in terms of the continuation of the monarchy, chances are that everything will stay the same. Despite the rumors, Prince William will never be king before Prince Charles. But the thing is that Charles is still likely to have a very short reign due to his age. Unlike his mother, who unexpectedly became queen at just 25 years old, 73-year-old Prince Charles has spent his entire life in preparation to wear the crown. As of now, he is the longest waiting heir apparent, and he will be the oldest British monarch ever to take the throne. And there is still a lot of uncertainty as to when that will happen. But after his own passing, the monarchy will continue to streamline and modernize as a younger generation takes the reins. But it's slightly less clear what will happen to the Commonwealth, which is the association of independent former colonies that accounts for almost a third of the world's population. In 2018, the Queen insisted that it was her sincerest wish that Charles carry on as head of the Commonwealth, to which all the government leaders agreed, and officially announced to the press that he would take her place when she passes.